Or 11 away from 9 o'clock, the Monday edition of the South African Morning. Now, Eskom wants the South Gauteng High Court to review Nersa's rejection of its multi-year pricing plan. Now, to remind you, the energy regulator has rejected the utilities application for a 3-year tariff determination. It's all very fancy wording, isn't it? The power utility says the regulator has created a vacuum, a regulatory vacuum, if you will, and is arguing it is struggling to operate. Well, so are we, because our lights can't stay on. Let's speak to economic and energy analyst Tshepo Kgadima. Tshepo, good to have you with us, not over Zoom for a change, probably because the power won't stay on, so we'd lose the connection. Yep. So I'm glad you're here. Where does Eskom think we can all get this money from?
Well, we have to take into account what happened in 2008 when then they said we need to rebuild. That's how Kusile and Midupi then came about. And at that time, the funding model was fundamentally flawed from day one, because the assumption was that they were going to fund these new builds from tariff increases over the years. We know what happened with those two mega projects, cost overruns. And the question still remains on whether or not South Africa got value for money for the hundreds of billions of rands that have been spent. Does that question remain? Well, that question still remains. We have not gotten, because we've got load shedding. You know, just the past financial year, there were 47 days of load shedding. That cost directly Eskom over 3 billion rand in revenue losses. Because every time that there is a load shedding, a day will average over 65 million rand of revenue loss to Eskom, let alone the cost to the economy or the negative impact to the economy overall. Now, the question is, can Eskom hold course that a tariff increase is the panacea for its very systematic financial problems? And the answer is definitely no, on the basis that if you look now, the past 5 years, we have had a continuing decline in demand of electricity. So that tells you that industrial commercial users have reduced or have resorted to alternative energy sources. The households in this country, whether through the municipalities or directly from Eskom, they account for 44.8% of Eskom's income stream. Now, the consumer, because of the increasing tariffs, we are finding that there's a higher rate of default. Whether you talk about Soweto, that they say has been a chronic defaulter in terms of paying for electricity, or you're talking about just any other household, we are seeing not only a decline in demand, but actually a higher default rate, because they just cannot afford to pay. Why? We've got the highest unemployment. Now, the highest unemployment is resultant, amongst other things, of the decrease in manufacturing, in mining, in agriculture, which ordinarily would have demanded electricity. And it's a zero-sum game, effectively, for Eskom.
It's a circle that, I mean, I just love the way you've wrapped it up for us in about 2 minutes, because it seems like a hamster wheel that we're on the whole time. But I suppose the question's going to come in is Eskom needs money to keep the power on. Nersa is saying, well, yes, but not right now. They've pushed this this payment request out by a couple of years. So we want to be clear on this. Nersa isn't saying no. They're just saying no right now. But eventually we're going to pay more for power that we can't get. I mean, when does this end, do you think?
Well, it's never ending for as long as you've got the leadership with the philosophy of management that they have at Eskom. That, I think, if there was ever a time for the Minister of Public Enterprises to intervene, this is the time. The course of action in the courts now, for me, it is ill-founded. It should not be, because, remember, the electricity tariff increases that we are seeing directly impact even on the monetary policy in terms of an inflation perspective. So the question is, to what extent can South Africa stomach or afford to have these higher electricity tariffs that there is no end in sight as to when they will...
I would say during COVID-19, even less of an appetite than before.
Yeah, absolutely. But on the other hand, let's bear this in mind. Eskom's, by their own account, from their audited financial statements, they spent 42 cents to produce a kilowatt hour of electricity. That is their cost. And yet they charge the Nersa approved tariff of R1.09. In 2022, it has been approved to go to R1.19 per kilowatt hour. The question then is, they have not made good costs as to the difference between 42 cents and R1.09. Can those be said to be realistic, cost-reflective costs of transmission as well as distribution of electricity? And my answer is no. They are wax lyrical about the fact that they've reduced the head count. That should have translated into cost savings. Correct. Well, that is to be welcomed. But the question is, are they able to increase the sales? Now they have dropped below the, I think they, in the past financial year, they had over 6.7% decrease in demand. And that is going to is a trend that is going to continue. There doesn't seem to be an end in sight in that decrease in demand. And of course, it means as people resort to other alternative energy sources, they are resorting to, in the villages, people are now using even cow dung. That environmentally creates a problem. In the townships, they are using coal. They are burning it inappropriately. That is an environmental hazard.
I would say, is there light at the end of the tunnel? But it seems if Eskom is responsible for the lighting, no, there won't be lighting at the end of the tunnel. But for the moment, I'm going to say thank you very much. And I wish you and I would have a positive chat one day about Eskom. It's going to happen. I know it's going to happen one day in the future.
We are the prisoners of hope.
The prisoners of hope. It's always a pleasure. Tshepo Kgadima, economic and energy analyst, looking at what is happening with Eskom and also Nersa pushing out those price increases. Yes, they use fancy terminology. In the end, it's about you and I paying more money. But Nersa sending that one down the leg side. All right, just before